I think a lot of organizations that I've worked with think they're understood because they spend so much time thinking about doing their job and what they're trying to accomplish in their business or their mission. But a lot of times they're not stepping back and thinking through, what do my key stakeholders need to know about us?
Yeah.
So those stakeholders could have created an opinion 20 years ago, and a totally, when your whole organization was totally different, or maybe they've heard some random things on, the internet, social media. You have to take responsibility.
Welcome to Being Understood, a podcast where we explore what it means to be understood and talk to the communicators who help organizations do that. I'm joined today by my co-host, Bess. Hi, Bess.
Hey, Liz. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. And we also have a special guest today, our Director of Integrated Communications, Emily. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
So let's just start from the beginning, but not the very beginning.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in communications.
Sure. I came to Thunheim through the public affairs door, and that after my graduate degree, I started as an intern and moved through a contract lobbying firm. So I have a lot of experience at the state capitol, and I also worked for the Minnesota Department of Health as their legislative liaison for one session. So I have a deep background in policy and advocacy, and I joined Thunheim in the year 2000 when we were helping the Twins get a new ballpark. At that point, that was 20 years ago. So
everyone going to Target Field know that was
we
part
helped
of
with that
work.
Yeah.
And
Very
proud of it.
Things have definitely changed over that time for me personally and in my growth, but also in the field. And when we were first working on the Twins account, we actually left little postcards on every seat at the Metrodome asking people if they supported the ballpark. And we hand keyed all those into a database and then started our grassroots, where things are completely different. With grassroots outreach now, a lot of it is digital and way more sophisticated. Mm-hmm. So we've seen it come a long ways.
Mm-hmm. How does the work on issues and advocacy, and also working in and around government, affect how you think about what you do today? Because your job has shifted, but obviously that's still part of how you got
Actually,
started.
I think it's interesting because about the time we were doing that grassroots work was when social media entered the scene. And I remember thinking at that time, wow, our work in grassroots and outreach is so applicable to this new media, because people are going straight, companies and organizations can have direct access to their customers and clients and members through social media. So we could directly craft messages for them, versus before we were generally using media relations and community relations to get our word out. But now we could craft things targeted to different audiences. Mm-hmm. So in a way, that grassroots training was perfect. It was perfect preparation for this type of communications now that is so hyper-targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard a lot of different definitions of what integrated communications means. I think we all kind of look at it differently, but how would you describe integrated communications?
Well, here at Thunheim, we really think of integrated communications as a way to help our clients reach their stakeholders in a way that's most important for those stakeholders, or the places where they get their news. Mm-hmm. And often that's through a variety of different channels, be it, the newspapers, social media, through things they do in the community or through community organizations. And we help our clients make sure that their messages are aligned across different platforms, sometimes especially in bigger companies, where all these different things are so siloed that nobody's thinking about the big approach. Like there's an advertising department, internal comms and external comms, public relations, social media, and they're all going in different directions. So we really help make sure that based on our clients' business goals, that all their messages are aligned, yet tailored for each stakeholder group.
Okay. Don't want to talk on top of Beth, so I'll jump in on that. You spend a lot of time both in external and internal communications, and I think internal communications is something that we don't talk as much about externally because a lot of times people come to us with questions about wanting more stories in media or wanting to have advertising or things like that that are not necessarily thinking with that hat of internal comms, but how important it is to have that internal connectivity and alignment of messages. Talk about just what that's like, because you work with a large organization, helping them align internally and then also externally. Talk about what that's like today, because I think it's, like you said, it's more complicated. Organizations are more complex and siloed, and yet being able to position and be understood really does require some dedication and alignment and thoughtfulness about how you're speaking internally and externally. So just talk about what that's like working with organizations trying to move the boat that way.
Sure. Well, over the more than 2 decades that I've worked with Thunheim, I have transitioned into a broader role beyond public affairs. And I do work with companies where we oversee a variety of different media, I guess, between internal comms, external comms, public relations, websites, social media, a whole targeted advertising. So the internal communications is interesting because just like any other audience, we have to make sure that we're developing content that's interesting and compelling to that audience, and then make sure that we're sharing it across a variety of internal channels like town hall forums, intranet content, their LinkedIn platforms. And so really making sure that organizations think of their own employees as one of their primary audiences is really, really important. Because if your own employees don't understand what your mission and vision and values and your corporate priorities are, then it's going to be impossible for them to be your best ambassadors out in the community. So that's really a primary audience that we make sure everybody's on board.
Yeah. What do you think's challenging about that today?
Well, since COVID and a lot of people are no longer working in an office setting, that's made us think creatively about how to keep people engaged, especially if they're working from home across vast geographies and don't have a chance very often to meet in person. So really thinking through, how are we going to keep people connected? How are we going to keep them informed? How are we going to encourage them to, read our newsletters, watch our town halls, participate, still feel connected to their organizations and to the missions of the organizations and what's important to the success of the organization as a whole. And we've had to, expand a lot of, digital communications as far as Zoom, other platforms like that, as well as a lot of digital outreach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's helped in the long run, or like made things easier?
I mean, I think it's just different. There's pros and cons of, an employee group working from an office versus home. And I think that we've proven that productivity has remained high, even with a large group of employees still working from home. But it does create the challenge of creating that culture and that mission focused and the team building. All that is just has to be really proactively considered and strategically executed so that people continue to feel engaged.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something so many companies are still trying to navigate. I don't think anyone has it down perfect yet. So switching gears just a little bit. So in the 20 years that you've been with Thunheim, social media, there's been a lot of changes with social media, a lot of evolutions, a lot of new platforms have popped up. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's been good for getting messages out there for clients, or do you think it makes it more challenging?
I'm mixed.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I think it's a really important avenue for our clients to use because they can become basically their own media themselves. Most of the organizations we work with now are, publishing their own content on their website and their social medias. A lot of them have their own podcasts, like we're doing here. And so it gives organizations the opportunity to directly craft their messages and get them into the pockets of the people they care most about. However, the challenge is that anybody can go on social media and say whatever they want to about you personally or your organization. And there's not a lot of fact checking. There's a lot of opinion-based stuff. So keeping an eye on what's being said on those socials is super important because it's a way to tap into a crisis or potential crisis that could be bubbling up. So there are rewards, but there's also challenges, with it, like with anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then AI too. I mean, that's definitely changing things for a lot of industries.
We are on the cusp of another huge leap. I don't know if it's forward. I hope it's forward, but it's a huge change that will affect and is already affecting every person in America and around the globe. So many of us are using Alexa, or Netflix helps recommend our movie choices, or there's so much information out there about us personally and about our likes and dislikes that these it just makes marketing a lot more advanced, and the opportunities there are amazing / maybe a wee bit scary. But we're all reaping benefits from it every day already, even with our MapQuest or our Google Drive. All these things are based on AI, even if it's some buzzword that's become popular in the last year or two. We're all using it in some way or another, and that's just going to get faster.
When you think about what you were talking about with social media, especially the need to monitor and be on top of that, do you find most clients get that part of that is an investment in your reputation, in being prepared? We talk often, Kathy's line is be on offense. We help you be on offense as opposed to, being a sitting duck and then something happens. When you're talking with clients and understanding that investment in monitoring and being prepared so that when someone says something that isn't true on social media, it doesn't feel so much like a fire drill. Obviously, at the scale of most clients who are thinking about integrated, it's something that's just part of our workflow. But how do you talk to clients about that? And do you feel like that's valued before the problem happens?
Well, it depends definitely on the size of the company or organization we're working with, like you said. But it is something that's should be monitored because things are being said by your stakeholders and they're being amplified and sent out, on the web, and then other people are influenced by what these opinions are by just random people. So if you're not watching it, you should be. And I've worked with some clients who have been just kind of scared to deal with it because they go on there and they're like, oh, people are saying things and I don't know what to do and I just want to turn it off and nobody really cares about this and this is a full-time job. We're just watching all these things. And it is an expensive endeavor because somebody really has to be on top of it and responding. So yes, sometimes people don't want to take those seriously, but they should because their reputation is at risk.
Yeah, I mean, we're all part of the team that gets tapped for crises as they come in or issues that we're helping clients manage. So we're pretty used to these conversations. And I think we've seen large-scale crises in the marketplace over the last couple of years where, like, in our definition of a true crisis, the business needs to change because of XYZ issue. And a lot of those things you can anticipate based on the types of inputs you're getting. How do you think organizations can think more broadly about reputation in terms of protecting it and being a little bit more proactive in seeing value in having counselors talk through those kinds of issues before they become public issues?
Well, it's always important to be prepared as best you can. So having a good crisis management plan in place and monitoring capabilities in place are going to help you be prepared and anticipate, like you said, possible things that are happening. But as far as the reputation, it's also an opportunity because clients who are strategically managing their tone and voice and online presence, they're the ones who typically get more loyal followers. And so it's really something to be deliberate about. Some companies take kind of a fun attitude or others take a more serious attitude, but we've helped a lot of clients determine based on their stakeholders what's the best voice and tone that you should be using across all of your channels so that you're building this relationship with your stakeholders. And again, if you're choosing kind of a more fun, lively persona, you should be consistent with that across all your stakeholder groups. You don't want to be super serious with your public affairs and then super goofy with your online. You want to have a tone that's consistent, that you've done the research to know your audiences are going to respond well to.
Right, and be understood, which is actually the name of this podcast, Liz.
Yes.
So we like to ask everyone that comes on, what does it mean to be understood? What does it mean to you to be understood?
Well, I think a lot of organizations that I've worked with think they're understood because they spend so much time thinking about doing their job and what they're trying to accomplish in their business or their mission. But a lot of times they're not stepping back and thinking through, what do my key stakeholders need to know about us?
Yeah.
So those stakeholders could have created an opinion 20 years ago and a totally, when your whole organization was totally different, or maybe they've heard some random things on, the internet, social media. you have to take responsibility, and if you're not seeing, public advocacy going anywhere in your direction at the Capitol, or if your employees are unengaged and not being loyal, or if your customers and clients aren't getting the information that they need so that they'll continue their connection with you as an organization, then you're really not doing your job. Mm-hmm. Even if your product is ace, if people don't understand that, you're not, that's your fault at the end of the day.
Well, and when something does come up, how strong are those relationships that you can fall back on too? Not everything is about a crisis, but as we've been talking about reputation, it's stronger with your stakeholders if you are understanding.
Have already developed those relationships and have built up a reservoir of support so that if and when you do ever hit troubled waters, which we all do at some point, that you have people who already understand you, respect you, will speak up for you, and will and defend you as a brand. So that is important. But also, on the converse, when things are going well, you want to be telling that story too, so that your stakeholders are aware, like, wow, things are buzzing over there. The good things are going, and we're proud to be, working with these organizations or supporting them or buying their products or services. So it's important in both ways.
Mm-hmm. Total different direction. You sit on a couple board of directors. One with our network that we're part of, global network of independent agencies. And also we share a love of arts organizations and both sit on boards of directors of local nonprofits in that space. What have you learned about leadership and governance from board roles that you also take into what you're doing with clients here and helping them be understood?
Well, any board's going to be coming together around one mission or goal, but it's always a group of diverse stakeholders, just like any other organization I work with. So trying to keep everybody focused and aligned and marching in the same direction is just as important in those roles as it is when you're crafting communications plans and engagement plans for organizations. When you're on a board, you really need to keep that group of people focused on, what are we trying to do here? What's our main goal? What's going to be important to accomplish in order to keep our mission moving forward? And that requires really making sure that the board members are all feeling comfortable and aligned. And when they're not, there's some work to do there, some corporate consulting, some growth as a board that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I think it's also it's helpful to put ourselves in the shoes of clients too, just understanding those pieces that we bring, being communications experts, while also looking at it in terms of all of these diverse areas of expertise around the table. How do you lift up the pieces that people are really good at and make sure you're dispersing people in the right places, and yet at the same time all on the same track? And so I see a lot of good synergy between what you were talking about with what we do for clients and what that governance role ends up requiring.
I totally agree. I think that as we think about how marketing and communications is becoming more and more integrated and focused on specific audiences and key stakeholders, it's really important to think through corporate consulting or organizational consulting, because a lot of times when we're working with clients, it's when we're trying to define what the business goal is or help amplify the business goals, a lot of times we find the little gaps, or maybe things aren't quite working right, or maybe there's some problems just with the communications within an executive team, or within a product line, or a lot of times we'll see things first because we're talking to so many different people across different silos that we can see flags come up, and that's when our corporate consulting experience really comes into play. We haven't, this isn't the first time we've seen this. We've seen variations of internal unharmony, discord for a long time. So it gives us the experience to help speak up and say, you know what, before we can get to the messaging, we need to step back and think through what changes maybe need to happen within an organization, and what changes need to happen externally, or for your stakeholders to know, so that you're both aligned on the same mission.
Yeah, a lot of it's expectation setting and alignment of those. And I think that's right. I think oftentimes, even within our own organization, it's easy to want to, you've got lots of smart people at your disposal within an organization. Let's figure it out. But sometimes that objectivity that a partner that has experience in many different organizations can bring can help clarify or make clear, oh, yeah, why didn't I see that? Well, it's because you're so close to it, or it's something you're working at every day, and that objectivity can illuminate a new path and be really compelling and dynamic.
That's some of the best value we can bring clients, because we aren't sitting directly in their shoes. We're sitting a little side out, and we can see things that they don't. Like you were saying, you're blinded to it when you're right in the middle of it. But somebody just, a step or two out can say, I think really the issue is here, and not, we need to address that before we can get to these other bigger things.
Yep.
Yeah. And we get to do some really cool stuff in our roles, which is always very exciting, very rewarding. We help clients through some really tough situations. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
I feel that at Thunheim, we have the opportunity to work on so many great projects and with different clients that are really trying to make the community a better place, both, in the Twin Cities metro area, the state, the region, nationally and globally, all across the board. We've got clients at every level, and I feel most happy, and one of the reasons I've been here so long is because the work that we do is so meaningful and so important to our communities and our future, that really gives me a big drive to continue working here. Plus, I love our colleagues. We work with such smart people on such interesting things. It's just, and that we're doing good. It just keeps me happy, keeps me engaged, keeps me thrilled to be a Thunheimer.
Oh, that's great. Meaningful. Yeah, Kathy likes to say we seem to run toward gnarly challenges or complex challenges. And I think that's really true. We're all interested in, that sounds difficult. Let's try to see if we can move that. Yep. And then, how does that move the world forward? And I think that's an exciting part, and doing it together. So I concur with all of those things.
Right. So we're almost out of time, but I know you do a lot of interesting things in your spare time. So tell us something interesting that people might not know.
I'm a sailor. I'm a potter. I'm a mother. I'm an avid book reader, gardener.
So you stay busy.
Yes. I own a camper. I do lots of things outside of the work workday that keep me connected to the community and involved and learning and challenging myself and giving myself a time to unplug and unwind as well. So,
which is so important.
Yes.
Yes, it's good to have those outlets. So
Emily and I are fellow Libby lovers, the library free ebook version. And if you're not a user of Libby, highly suggest it.
log on through your library.
At first, I thought I would miss the instant satisfaction of Amazon downloading books, but I actually like waiting because there's usually one that I want to read, and then I'm like, ooh, when this one comes, it'll be so exciting.
Yes, that's how I
And if
feel
you don't
too.
like it, you don't feel bad because you didn't spend money on it, and you can just send it back and someone else can take it.
I
love
agree.
it.
It's a really great way to use the libraries again. The libraries have changed through COVID as well, but wow, the resources between audiobooks and books and research that we can all have access to from our phones is just mind-boggling.
Yeah. Amazon, you're great, but big plug for Libby because I think it is a great resource that a lot of people don't know to tap into.
I'll have to check it out. I
Yes.
have not checked it out
Yes.
yet. So
We'll show you
feel
right
so
after
far
this. We can do a
behind.
demonstration. No, I appreciate about Emily that she's kind of willing to jump into a lot of
Yes.
you picked up sailing more recently, and you are one of those people who is both a great storyteller about your adventures and also willing to jump in and try things. And I think that that's a great way to live.
yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate that about you. Yes.
I think a lot of us here at Thunheim are that kind of people, just always growing, learning, willing. At an agency, we work on so many different topics that, although some of us have deep knowledge in a certain sector or whatever, all of us at some time are pulled into something that, wow, we knew nothing about 5 minutes ago, but we're going to jump in and learn and grow and get our minds into what makes this sector tick and, how can we create messages and stories that support, whatever client that is.
Yeah.
And having that ability to just change gears and learn different things is another thing that definitely has kept me here all these years.
If you had to give advice to people who are maybe in college for communications or political science or some of these tangential areas to the type of work we do, given all of the things that we talked about, it's gotten harder to communicate, but it's also an exciting and burgeoning time for new technologies. What advice would you have for young professionals interested in this work?
I guess I'm from the camp of do a lot of diverse things. A lot of us here at Thunheim came through different doors. We have TV producers, we've got people from the IT world, we've got people from political campaigns, we've got people that came just through corporate communications but the more ways you can learn about different things and work with people and respect and trust people who complement your skill set, the more you can bring in, and not just expect everybody to have exactly the background you have, but diversity really does make our team stronger. And Thunheim's collective best philosophy of really creating teams that bring in the best skills and resources for each client team, that has just been so important. So I guess in short, find things that you love, and do different things, and don't feel like you have to start at A and go direct to Z. There can be all sorts of wanderings through and around that you never thought would come back together. But especially in an agency, all those different experiences you're learning from and you're growing from. So just being open to new experiences, learning new things, and trusting and working with other people who have different views and backgrounds and experiences and skills than you do is going to make you stronger and a better consultant.
Yeah.
Definitely. All that's so important. So great advice.
Yes. So from here, we go out to the world being curious and learning and trying new things while also continuing to build our connectivity in the world. Thanks for coming on today, Emily.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Fun to talk to you both.
Awesome to talk to you. Thanks.